everyone, and welcome to a new video interview for Yogonet. Today we are joined by Jure Hodnik, Products Operation Specialist at Crash Gambler. Jure will be sharing with us some of the key features of Crash Gambler's new scale, which helps players choose fair online games. First of all, hello Jure, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, and nice to meet you as well.
So to start with the interview, first of all, can you share with us a brief overview of what Crash Gambler does, including its history, the team behind it?
Yeah, for sure. So Crash Gambler started in 2023, so almost 2 years ago, and we started it when it was becoming more clear and clear that Crash games are not going anywhere. Having Crash gambling experience before, I joined the team, and I've been present ever since. So what we're doing essentially is building the go-to platform for both new and experienced crash gamblers, and we're focused on providing value basically from on every page, starting with our homepage, which is now home to the most comprehensive games database out there. We also do detailed game reviews, in-depth guides about complex topics like provable fairness, algorithms, gameplay strategies. And one thing we also do is we have a rather large community where we organize crash gambling tournaments. We share ideas on strategies and things like that. One thing that we did recently was organize live stream tournaments, which was super fun, and our community loved it, and we plan to do it more. That is generally it.
Now speaking about this scale that I mentioned in the introduction, online gaming providers often describe their games as fair, but players ultimately end up relying on their claims. They can't check that themselves. So my
Yeah.
question would be, what makes probable fairness in gaming so important, and how does Crash Gamblers score scale help players choose games that are fair?
Yeah, I think one problem that every gambler out there has is feeling cheated. I mean, that's the worst problem in every situation in life, not just when gaming. And I think that feeling like you're cheated is reason enough why most players start seeking out information about the game's fairness and try verifying the game's fairness with like real-time provable fairness systems in the game. And I think communicating the fairness claims to the players could actually be a good competitive advantage for the game providers. The players will just keep coming back if they feel that they're being treated right in your game. And what Crash Gambler's fairness score does is it helps player evaluate the fairness simply by examining its score. Um, that being said, unless there's the game offers some kind of in-game fairness verification, it's super difficult for the players to understand what RNG certificates are, what the certificates are from, respected gambling jurisdictions. And I think there's not a lot of players that go so in depth about understanding how fair the game actually is and if the certificates behind the game's random number generator are valid. So to battle that problem, what Crash Gambler started doing was we first started publishing in-depth guides about provable fairness, which really went into detailed explaining how provable fairness works and how random generators work in general. But I think there's not a lot of players that are interested in reading 2,000 plus words guides and really focusing in on the details. So once we realized that, we started evaluating the games ourselves. So let's say we've added a new game to Crash Gambler. We did the verification check. So I went to the game provider's page. I checked their RNG certificates. I checked the certificates from gambling jurisdictions. And that's essentially how Crash Gambler's fairness score scale was born. Um, and yeah, the whole idea is for us to provide the players an assurance of fairness by simply taking a glance at a rating that reflects each game's fairness. All they need to do if they want to go more into detail about the fairness score is check our explanation page, which is rather short, so you understand what each rating means. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's our idea
Yeah,
behind
I
this.
was about to ask you to explain a bit more in detail how the scale works, but I think that you have already given us
Yeah.
a quite detailed explanation. My question would be for the viewers out there. So the scale goes from 1 to 5.
Yep.
What does each score determine?
Yeah, so like you said, the scale goes from 1 to 5, with 5 being the best. And essentially, the number 5, the ultimate rating, means that the game offers real-time in-game provable fairness verification system that also allows players to modify their client-side seed value. That's the ultimate, how would you call it, the ultimate level of fairness. Then rating 4 just means that the game offers sufficient information about the algorithm, and it also offers real-time in-game fairness verification, so players can check the hash data of every round. They can verify the hash data using external encryption tools, for example. Then we have rating number 3, which is uh, super common, but at the same time pretty complex because this means that the game is certified, the fairness behind the game is certified with valid RNG certificates or certificates from reputable gambling jurisdictions. And this is where we do most of our work, checking the certificates and checking which gambling jurisdictions are behind each game. Then you also have scores 2 or 1, which is questionable fairness or fairness without any real proof. So you
Right.
know some games will say that the game is fair, but there's no information on the game provider's page. There's no information in the game alone, so that's when we are forced to assign the lowest score. But before we assign each score, we also contact the game providers for more explanation, maybe for them to provide us proof. Um, and yeah, and we do this like by the process that I described briefly now. So we inspect the in-game documentation, we inspect the game providers' pages, seek out the certificates, email the providers if needed, and yeah, and then based on all the data that we collect, that we verify, we assign the game a fairness score. So there's a lot of work in the background.
Yeah, I can see that. Uh, what role do you ultimately see this scale playing when it comes to determining and improving the fairness assessment of crash games in a specific? Because we already have reviews, but this is something entirely new. What role can this play, this new scale?
Yeah, I think the what we want to do in the long term. So what the mission behind the fairness score is. So this was just step one, verify each game that we have listed on Crash Gambler. This was a lot of work, but this is just the beginning. So what we strive to do is to improve how game providers communicate the fairness claims to the players. So there's definitely room for improvement when it comes to just communication between the provider or the casino and the end player. And I think our fairness score can serve as a solution for that. And yeah, like I said, this is the ultimate goal in the long run. So providing a solution that will help players understand how fair the game is, and also not force, but help providers communicate those claims in a better way. Um, yeah, that's.
Can you share with us? I think that you have already did a bit, but some of the initial results of this first stage of implementing the scale. For instance, what are some of the most frequent grades within the
Mhm.
five-tier system that you are seeing? Are also players showing an interest in accessing this scale?
Yeah, definitely. So we don't have a lot of data yet since this is a newly released feature. But there was a demand from our community even before we released it. There was a lot of, talk about how do you know this game is fair? And I was
Right.
I was telling players, yeah, this game is fair, guys. Don't worry. But there was a lot of questions like how do you know? How can you prove that? And that's the question that we wanted to answer. So to your question about the most common scores, it's 3 and 4 in almost equal amounts. I went and counted them yesterday, to be honest, and that's actually a rather pleasant surprise. It's a good result. So that means that the
Yeah.
majority of the games that we have listed are either backed by a RNG certificate that is valid, that is reputable, or that the game offers in-game fairness within the game. Which so overall, I would say that the whole, how would you say, the landscape of fairness is much better than we first expected, and which is good news
Yes.
for players for sure. Yeah, and like I said, our mission right now is to act as a bridge between the game providers and the players to help improve how fairness is communicated in the future. So there wouldn't be even a need for us to do all the hard work behind the fairness score.
Right. Well, speaking of this hard work, Crash Gambler is currently in negotiations with Game Tech Labs to verify the score. Can you tell us a bit more about that process and what's next for the scale in general terms?
Yeah, I think for the fairness scale to get the recognition it deserves, we are currently trying to get it verified by a reputable gaming lab. So we're in negotiation stages with a couple of labs right now. So we want to have the process verified, that the process is as optimized as it can be, that it can be trusted. And I think once we get through that stage, we can progress on the path of helping providers communicate fairness in a better way through the scale that's going to be verified by a reputable gaming lab. So that would be ideal. There's nothing that I can reveal yet, but we are working on it.
Now for the last question, my question would be, we are seeing that Crash games, they saw a major rise in popularity this year, over the last few years actually. So my question would be, what are the keys behind this sustained growth, this specific vertical and category? What's your take on, yeah, how Crash games developed over this year that is coming to an end?
Mhm. So yeah, this is definitely gonna be my take, and I think if you ask five different people, you're gonna get five different answers. But I think the key behind Crash games and the popularity that they gained in the past 10 years is the fact that they're simple. At its core, they're super simple games, and they offer players, the manual control over the payouts. So you can cash out at 2x if you want, whereas if you play a slot game, you just press the button and hope for the
Right.
best. So in Crash games, you still have some manual control when are you gonna, jump out of the game. And I think that this is the thrill that players simply love, and this is what keeps players coming back to Crash games. And at the same time, we've also been seeing Crash games become more and more complex, which gives it another dimension. So there's been a lot of betting automation, a lot of what multiple betting positions. You can place three bets at a time, even four bets at the same time. So this allows players to, to develop strategies, talk about the strategies,
Mm.
share the strategies. So there's just a lot to talk about, which explains why our community is so lively, because there's always something to try to test. And yeah, as for 2024, I would say this was the year when we really saw Crash games explode in terms of just new releases. And I think the key thing, if I would point out something this year, was that there was a there was an increase in creativity in both like design of the new Crash games and in terms of game mechanics. So the game mechanics are basic, but you can put different twists upon them, and we've seen game providers release games with 3D designs, click to play game mechanics, which were a new thing this year, and yeah, that's pretty much it. And I think it's gonna continue. I don't see it stopping anytime soon, to
Yeah,
be honest.
that was going to be my question. Do you expect this momentum to carry on the next year? And what role will Crash Gambler be playing in 2025 alongside the development of
Mhm.
Crash games?
Yeah, I think it's definitely gonna continue because it's like there's not a lot of new game genres that pop up that players love. You have all the old genres that are still dominating. Slots. They've been here for multiple decades. Plinko as well is rather new, but not so new if you think about it. But I think Crash games are a breath of new fresh air, in the whole gambling scene, and I think they're bound to continue. Um, we've also been seeing like game providers dedicate more and more releases to Crash mechanics, and the instant win category is only going to be growing. In terms of Crash Gambler, we plan on continuing on our mission to provide value with everything that we release. So we're going to continue. We're currently focusing on covering all the games with game reviews. Um, we're also touching upon topics like developing markets, and we're covering topics like game developers focusing on releasing lightweight games for markets like Africa and Brazil, for players that don't necessarily have the strongest internet connections, or they perhaps have older devices. Yeah, one thing that we're also going to continue on is building our community, organizing more fun tournaments, organizing live stream tournaments, and continue just what we've been doing so far. Yeah.
We are looking forward to it. And again, Jure, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you as well. It was a pleasure.